Hey guys, welcome to Liquid Church. Welcome into all of our campuses. Everyone watching online, man, we're so glad you're here. We are in week 2 of our Peace of Mind series, and here's the heartbeat of the whole thing, is that perfect peace. It's not the absence of problems, it's the presence of Jesus. And if you were with us last week, we had this powerful moment. We had this powerful moment where people stood up across every campus. They stood to their feet and they just said it out loud. They said, I'm done pretending. I don't have it all together. They raised their hand and said, I struggle too. And it was a little bit of a wake-up call for all of us, wasn't it? To realize, oh my goodness, I'm not the only one. We're all carrying something. And listen, if you missed last week, you're okay. You're not too far behind. You're not late to the party. But the truth is that every single one of us wrestles with mental health at some level. In fact, 94% of Americans admit they deal with anxious thoughts on a regular basis. That's like a rounding error. That's all of us. All of us deal with this. So here at Liquid, here's what we believe. We believe that the church should be the safest place to talk about it, to talk about mental health. This is not a place where you have to have it all together, where you have to fake it, put on a mask, pretend that you're fine. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about one of the most common struggles of all, and it's called anxiety. And we're going to talk about how we fight anxiety with faith. Which reminds me, did I ever tell you guys about the time I was attacked by a bear? Let me just back the story up a little bit. It was my final semester of undergraduate. My advisor drops the bomb, and she says, Zach, you're not going to graduate. You're 2 credits shy. My parents, they'd already booked flights, their camcorders charged, and now I got to call them and tell them, like, hey, your son's not walking, he's sitting. My anxiety started to spike instantly, and then she said 2 words that I would regret forever: wilderness challenge. Survive a week in the wild, and I graduate. But if I quit early, I got to move back in with mom and dad. So the stakes are pretty high. But I did it. I ran through the training. I tied the knots. I rubbed some sticks together, and I thought, okay, Bear Girls, move over. I've got this. And then they dropped me in the wilderness, and I realized really quickly, I don't got this at all. It was literally the worst week of my entire life. There I was, all alone, and the bears knew it. They knew I was vulnerable. It's the middle of the night. It's pitch black outside. I'm zipped up in my sleeping bag. I'm huddled under this kind of sad excuse for shelter. I'd made it out of sticks and leaves the night before. It had been raining. I'm freezing cold, and then I heard it. The rustling, the leaves crunching behind me. And at first it sounded far away, but then it got closer and closer. I could hear the tree branches snapping. I swear I could literally hear the bear claws scratching against the rocks, and my body, it froze. My spine just tingled. I'm lying there just wide awake, and I'm thinking, man, mom and dad's house doesn't sound so bad right now. Fewer bears for sure. The footsteps are getting closer. I'm gripped with fear, but I did what any grown man would do in this situation. I pulled the sleeping bag completely over my head. Because obviously the bear can't eat me if he can't see me. Bear Grylls taught me that. But the bear, he didn't get the memo. He kept coming closer and closer, inches from me at this point. I could hear his breath hovering next to me, and I had no choice. And in one single moment of courage, I shot up. I made myself as big as possible. I shouted with all my strength, and the bear ran away. And just like that, gone. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the day that I vanquished a bear with my bare hands. That was a day I vanquished a bear with my bare hands. Thank you, Liquid. There's a bear hunter up here. You gotta celebrate that. And we laugh, but here's what I've learned, is that sometimes the only way through fear is to fight back. Sometimes the only way through fear is to fight back. And what's true of bears is even more true of life. Fear only grows bigger when we hide from it, doesn't it? You can't stay curled up, hiding in the sleeping bag of anxiety, just hoping that one day it will go away. No, you've got to stand up, you've got to face it, and you have to fight back. And if you've been watching the news over the last few weeks, you know what I know, that our world has enough fear. Our world has enough anxiety. Every headline, every alert on your phone is shouting out the words, you should be afraid, you should be anxious, you should be anxious. But I came today to tell somebody that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. He's given us a spirit of power, of love, and a sound mind. You hearing that, Liquid? I think it's time for us to start fighting back. Are you with me? Because our world says anxiety is just a normal thing, that we're just going to be anxious 94% of us all the time. That's what our world says. But I came to declare Psalm 27:1, that the Lord is my light. He is my salvation. Whom shall I fear? He's the stronghold of my life. Whom shall I be afraid? And then listen, I know that voice inside of you is loud. I know sometimes it feels like anxiety has already won the day. It looms like a bear outside your tent, growing bigger and bigger in the dark. But I came to tell somebody today, resist the devil and he'll flee from you. Hallelujah. Did you catch that? James doesn't say he might flee. He doesn't say, oh, he'll think about fleeing. He says he will flee. So here's the charge. We're not going to curl up in fear anymore. We're not surrendering to anxiety anymore. We're going to stand up in faith and we're going to fight back, because we are not victims. We are victors in Jesus. I'm glad you're with me today, because we're going to start fighting back. And if you'll lean in by the end of today, you're going to walk away with 2 tools that I know will help you fight anxiety. These are 2 tools that you can start using right now, because sometimes the only way through fear is to start fighting back. Before we get started, though, let me just give you a couple disclaimers. The first one is that this subject matter, just like last week, it's so complex, and at the same time, it's also so personal. Every single one of us is walking into this room at a different point in our struggle with anxiety, and for some of us, we've just never really given it all that much thought, and for others of us, it's this daily battle that we live in. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about beating conditional anxiety, not clinical anxiety. So if you're walking through panic attacks, long-term anxiety, we honor you finding healing through counseling or medication. And that doesn't make you less spiritual. It actually just means you're taking things seriously. But also, I want to say this. I don't want to give you the impression that anxiety can be like waved away with a simple memory verse. When I talk about anxiety in this series, I'm not referring to the clinical anxiety where there's like a chemical imbalance or a mental illness. I'm mainly talking about conditional anxiety, these situations that cause irrational worry, the fear, the panic. And today I want to give you some tools to fight back. The second disclaimer, and again, I said this last week, I'm not a mental health professional, so I'm not an expert in this field, but what I will be doing is speaking just from my own personal experience and what I've learned along the way in my own mental health journey. And this particular topic is really near and dear to my heart, because off and on throughout my own life, I've struggled with the conditional or situational anxiety. I remember so clearly the first time that I experienced it. I was about 18 years old. It was my senior year of high school. And if you've ever been there, you know, right in that season, it's like life throws every stressor imaginable and just dumps it on you all at once. I had ACT and SAT exams. I got final projects, college applications, part-time job, family pressure, basketball practice, and it's just all piling on at once. And I remember sitting on my dad's couch one day. I'm like typing on my computer with one hand and downing my 5th Mountain Dew with the other. And my mind, it just wouldn't stop running. I was rehearsing test questions and making mental to-do lists. I'm replaying every mistake that I'd made since kindergarten. My stomach was in knots. My shoulders just felt tight like concrete. And sleep, like just forget about it. I just lie there at night, staring at the ceiling, worrying about everything and solving nothing. Now to think about it, it's actually very similar to my life now, parenting toddlers. Like my stomach's in a knot, I'm worrying about everything, no sleep, waking up at 2 a.m. wondering, what did I get myself into? Mom and Dad, we see you in the room. Come back next week because we want to show you how to raise kids, calm kids in a chaotic world. That's for you. But looking back now, I realized that I didn't have a word for it back then, but it was textbook anxiety. And in my desperation, I went to a mentor. I unloaded everything that I was carrying, and I was just hoping for some help. And he went well, but it felt like a gut punch. All he said was, Zach, well, you know what the Bible says in Philippians 4:6, don't be anxious about anything. And all I could think to myself was, don't be anxious about anything. I'm literally anxious about everything. And here's the problem is that I didn't hear encouragement. I just heard discouragement. What I heard was, you're anxious, so you're failing. You're anxious, so God must be disappointed in you. Instead of comfort, I felt condemned. And it's a lonely thing to sit in your fear, but it's even lonelier to feel like God thinks you should be stronger than you are. And maybe you felt that too. You came in here today carrying anxiety, and the churchy message that you've heard is, you just must not have enough faith. But I need you to hear this today. Anxiety doesn't make you a bad Christian. It just makes you human. We said this last week, but I'll say it again. You can be both fragile and faithful at the same time. And let me just prove this to you. One of my favorite passages in all of scriptures is from Psalm 139. And King David, he pens these words describing our God. And here's what he says about our God. He says, God, you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. He keeps going on. This is what he says next. He says, you saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. How precious. This is my favorite part of the whole passage. He says, how precious your thoughts about me, O God. They can't even be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand on the seashore. And when I wake up, you are still with me. King David is reminding us that our God thinks about us more times each day than there are grains of sand on the seashore. Do you know how many grains of sand are on the seashore? There's a lot of them. We said it last week. Your peace is on Jesus' mind. David understands that. He writes it. He sings songs about it. He declares the beauty and the majesty of our God. He says, I'm wonderfully made. He's declaring his beliefs. He's declaring his faith. And yet, watch how Psalm 139 ends. He ends by saying, search me, God. Know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Do you know what that tells us? It tells us that even though we may worship and love God with every part of our being, we might still have anxious thoughts. It tells us that even though we know that God is fully in control of the entire world, we might still wake up in the middle of the night worried about our kids, worried about our finances, worried about whether that noise in the kitchen is a burglar, a bear, or maybe it's just the ice maker going off again. In other words, fear and faith are not mutually exclusive. The battle that you're fighting with your mental health, it doesn't make you a bad Christian. If anything, it just means that you're joining the long list of Jesus followers who are in desperate need of a Savior in their life. And here's what I've just come to learn. I've come to learn that anxiety is not a sin, but what it is a signal. It's not a sin, but rather a signal from your brain that's trying to get your attention. Now, I learned this from my counselor. I never forget what he taught me. I was sitting on the couch, and we're talking about my anxiety, and my counselor, he looks at me, and no joke, he literally said, have you ever been around a bear? And I thought, finally, a question I'm overqualified to answer. I have, in fact, been around a bear. Most people, they bring like their stress or their marriage problems into counseling. I bring my wildlife encounters. That tells you something about me. So I counsel her, he's like, close your eyes and just imagine for a second you're in a forest and you're facing down a bear. He didn't take much imagination. And then he started to explain something that's just stuck with me ever since. He said, Zach, your God designed your brain. He said he designed your brain with this little almond-shaped thing called an amygdala. And the amygdala, it's like your body's alarm system. It's the thing that fires off when you sense danger. So back in the day, if you ran into a grizzly in the woods, the amygdala, it kicked on. Your adrenaline spiked. Your heart started racing. Your muscles got tense. And you had two options in that moment. You could fight or you could flight. Fight means you puff yourself up. You get big. You make noise. You're ready to throw down. Flight means you run, you hide, you curl up in your sleeping bag and pretend maybe the bear will just go away. In that moment, it took everything inside of me to not interrupt him and be like, hold up, how much are you charging me to explain bear attacks to me right now? Don't worry, I held my tongue. But then my counselor said, the problem is, Zach, is that most of the time you're not fighting bears. You're fighting emails, you're fighting bills, you're fighting that weird look somebody gave you in the hallway, but your amygdala, that little part of your brain, it doesn't know the difference. It still sets off the same alarm, the same signal, which means your body ends up constantly living in fight or flight mode, even when you're just lying at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling fan. And as he explained this, it's like this light bulb came on. I started running through my life in all the ways that I had responded to my anxiety. Sometimes I'm a flight guy. I shut down, I hide, I avoid. For me, that may look like scrolling on my phone for hours. It may look like binge watching Netflix instead of having the hard conversation. It looks like me lying in bed, literally pulling the covers over my head, hoping the anxiety just magically disappears. But you guys know this. No matter how much we hide in our sleeping bag, that bear gets bigger and bigger, doesn't it? It keeps coming back. You can't hide from anxiety. Other times I'm in fight mode and I just overachieve. I use anxiety as this rocket fuel to just do more. I'll wake up at 3 a.m. anxious. I'll open my laptop and convince myself, if I could just knock out 20 more emails, maybe I'll feel okay. Where are my overachievers in the room? I'll overcommit. I'll add one more project. I'll say yes to one more meeting. And here's the crazy thing is people actually applaud you for doing that. They'll say, wow, he's so driven. He's so productive. But what they don't see is behind the scenes, you're burning out. You're breaking down. Because all you're really doing is fighting shadows in the dark. That's what happens when your amygdala runs wild. It takes small things like a missed text message, a doctor's appointment, a credit card statement, and it convinces you that a 400-pound grizzly bear is about to eat you alive. And here's what my counselor told me. This is a game changer in my life. He said, Zach, fight and flight are not the only options you have. You don't have to overachieve your way of anxiety. You don't have to avoid your way of anxiety. God gives us a third option. And this third option, it's literally straight from the life of Jesus. My counselor, he opened up his Bible, he turned to Mark 14, and Mark 14 is the account of the final night of Jesus' life. It's right before he goes to the cross. And in this passage, Jesus takes his friends to the Garden of Gethsemane. He knows exactly what's about to happen to him. Watch what Mark writes about Jesus. He says that they went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. He then took Peter, James, and John, his closest friends. He took them along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. And that's when he said, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Think about that. Jesus, the Son of God himself, is saying, I'm overwhelmed. I'm at my breaking point. I am anxious. If you're anxious, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're a bad Christian. It just means you're human. Notice what Jesus doesn't do. He doesn't ignore it. He doesn't hustle harder. He doesn't run away. No, he names it. He names it out loud to his closest friends. Do you know what Jesus is teaching us here? Is that if you want to fight anxiety, you have to name it first. That's the first tool I want to give you today. If you want to fight anxiety, you have to name it. And this tool, okay, listen. This tool is so simple, you're going to roll your eyes at me. You're going to think there's no way this can work, but I promise you, if you do it, it does. I call this the I feel anxious about tool. And here's how it works in my life. Whenever I feel my anxiety rising, I just go to my closest people. Jesus went to Peter, James, and John. I go to my wife, Casey, and I name it. I say, I feel anxious about, and then I fill in the blank. Like I feel anxious about this mole on my neck. I Googled it on WebMD, and apparently I've got 3 weeks to live. Or I feel anxious about my kids and the way that they're acting out. I feel anxious about whether we're going to have enough money to make it through the month. I feel anxious about the meeting that my boss called tomorrow. Whatever it is, I say it out loud. And now listen, I know that sounds silly. Like, how could simply speaking the words I feel anxious about actually calm me down? But I'm telling you, every time it does. Because when I give it a name with my mouth, the anxiousness starts to lose its power. How many of you know that anxiety grows in the dark, but it shrinks in the light? And speaking it out loud is the best and first way to bring it into the light. But I know this is difficult to do because it can feel silly, it can feel embarrassing. But you guys said it already. We're gonna fight our anxiety together. So we're gonna practice this right now in the room. And here's what I'm gonna have you guys do at all of our campuses in the room. You're gonna turn to your neighbor. Turn to your neighbor real quick. If you don't know them, introduce yourself. Give them your name. And then we're gonna practice this. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do the words. We're gonna say the words, I feel anxious about, and then I need you to fill in the blank. I feel anxious about what I saw on the news last week. I feel anxious about my housing situation. I feel anxious about my health. You fill in the blank. You don't have to give them all the details of your life. You don't have to give them your whole life story. We don't have that much time, but we are gonna practice together. Okay, turn to your neighbor, greet them, and then name it. If you're online, if you're watching from home, type it in the chat. I feel anxious about, and then fill in the blank. Okay. Some of you guys got out of control. Come on back. Come on back. This is church. This is not a counseling session. It felt a little silly. But look around the room. Look at the smiles. Look at the lightness. It feels silly at first, but speaking it out loud takes the power away, doesn't it? And there's actually some really cool science behind this, the way that God designed us. The amygdala is the fear center of our brain, and it sets off that alarm. Danger, there's a bear. And if you let it, it'll run. It'll go wild. It's going to look for grizzlies everywhere in your life. That's why in our brains, we get one anxious thought after the next. It's just your amygdala looking for anything that could get you. It's why our brains do that over and over again. The amygdala, once fired, it's just going to keep looking for anything and everything that can kill you. But there is another part of your brain. This part of your brain is the prefrontal cortex. And this part right here, it controls your logic functioning and your speech. And watch how God designed this. When your prefrontal cortex turns on, the amygdala turns off. It's like a light switch. So literally, when you speak out the words, I feel anxious about, you are physically turning off the alarm in your brain. So speaking, journaling, typing, even praying those words out loud, that alone is enough to take control of your brain back. That's how God designed you. Yeah, we can celebrate. that. So whenever you do this, you're disrupting the anxiety and you're introducing a new thought pattern. It's what Paul is talking about in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5. He says, we're going to demolish every argument, every pretension, anything that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. We can demolish our anxiety and we can take captive every thought. We're going to take captive every thought and we're going to make it obedient to Jesus. When we speak the words, I feel anxious about, we take those thoughts captive and we say to them, fear will not win this day.
Amen. You better preach.
And we turn that alarm off in our brain. And so my wife and I, this is so embarrassing, but literally on a weekly basis, we will use this tool. We'll simply name it. And we have found so much freedom. Your anxiety, it's not a sin. It's not that something's wrong with you. It's just a signal. It's a signal that says you were never meant to carry this alone, because facing bears alone never works out the way that you would expect it to. I know this from firsthand knowledge. I woke up the next morning after I'd survived the bear attack. Okay, woke up is a very generous term. I didn't sleep a second. My amygdala made sure of that. The sun woke up. And I crawled out of my sleeping bag. And honestly, I half expected the bear to still be there, just like crouched in the woods, waiting for me, stalking me, because you know they wait till you're most vulnerable. But then the other thought I had was like, now I need to get out there because this is going to be a great sermon illustration one day. So I need to get some pictures of the bear tracks to prove to everybody how massive this thing was, the bear that I fought off with my bare hands. So I went searching, and I knew from the noises the night before that there was going to be some evidence there, maybe some broken branches, the claw marks in the dirt, something. But here's what I found instead. It shocked me. No branches were broken. Instead, just like a couple little twigs were moved around. There was no giant claw marks in the rocks, just some like small scratches in the dirt. And the bear tracks, well, they turned out to be tiny rabbit footprints. And that's when it hit me. I realized just how much danger I had actually been in all along. I hadn't defeated a bear. I'd actually defeated a bear that had learned how to disguise itself as a rabbit. That's way scarier. And again, we laugh. But how often do we allow anxiety to turn rabbits into bears in our life? We get an unexpected bill in the mail, it's a rabbit. But anxiety says it's financial ruin, it's foreclosure, your family's gonna be homeless, and we turn it into a bear. A friend doesn't text us back, it's just a rabbit. Anxiety says I've lost them, everybody always leaves me, I'm always going to be alone, and we turn it into a bear. The doctor says we need to run more tests, it's just a rabbit. Anxiety says it's cancer, it's terminal, it's over. It turns into a bear. You're noticing that your child is struggling in school. It's just a rabbit, guys. But anxiety says they'll never succeed, they'll always struggle, and it's all my fault, a bear. You make a mistake at work, rabbit. Anxiety says I'm gonna be fired. How am I gonna provide for my family? And we turn it into a bear. That's what happens when you let your amygdala run wild. It tells you stories. It takes rabbits and turns them into bears. And that's why I'm saying anxiety may not be a sin, but it is a signal that it's time to stop spinning in your head. It's time to stop facing that bear on your own. We need to take every thought captive in our lives. Your first tool to do that is to name it. I feel anxious about, I know it feels silly to do, but turning a rabbit into a bear, that's even sillier, guys. That's the first tool. The second tool I want to teach you is to tame it. To tame it. I even made it rhyme. You name your anxiety so that you can tame it. And this tool is also straight from the life of Jesus. See, in my life, I usually treat my anxious thoughts as this problem to solve. But the reality is, I can't fix everything. I can't control the news. I can't solve my future before it happens. I can't even control whether my landlord is going to raise my rent. But here's the good news. I don't have to. Because taming anxiety doesn't mean controlling it. It means transferring it. I take it out of my hands and I put it into my Father's hands. That's exactly, we can celebrate that. We can celebrate that. That's exactly what Jesus shows us to do in Mark 14. He names his anxiety to his closest friends, to Peter, James, and John. He says, my soul, it's overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He says, I'm anxious about. And then watch what happens next. He goes a little bit further. He falls to the ground and he prays. And here's what he says. He says, Abba, Father, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me. Take this cup from me. He's transferring it, yet not what I will, but what you will. Let me remind you, this is still the very Son of God. Jesus actually has the power to tame anything and everything. And yet notice what he does instead. He goes to his Father. He doesn't ignore his anxiety. He doesn't hustle harder. He doesn't run away from it. He names it and then he tames it by putting it in his Father's hands. And here's my question. What if we saw anxiety the same way? Not as a problem to fix, but as a signal. A God-designed reminder that says, come closer and cling to me. Here's how tool number 2 works. Every time an anxious thought comes, you stop and you tame it. And you treat it as a signal that your Father wants to hear from you. He delights in you. He's not annoyed by your anxious thought. He invites them. Listen, anxiety is going to ourselves and our imagination for the worst case scenario. But when you tame it, you transfer it. You redirect it back to God. And what if the same God who knit you together in your mother's womb, the same God who fearfully and wonderfully made you, what if that same God actually designed you with a signal deep inside your soul? What if he designed it that way? Like an alarm clock on your phone. That's what anxiety is. It's not proof that you're broken. It's actually your Father beckoning you closer. So when anxiety hits, and it will, use it like that alarm. God is calling you. So the first thing that you do is you name it. The second thing that you do is you get it into the light by taming it and you transfer it into God's hand. Because anxiety may not be a sin, but it is a signal, and that signal is calling you back to your God. This is exactly why the gospel of Jesus matters so much. Because the same Jesus who sweated drops of blood in the garden, he carried his anxiety all the way to the cross. And he did it for you. He faced the very weight of the world so you could face your world with him. He didn't run from it. He didn't avoid it. He carried it all the way to his death. But it didn't end there. He rose again. He rose again. He rose again. He rose again. And when he rose again, it proved once and for all that he's bigger than anything that keeps you awake at night. Our anxiety, listen, it turns rabbits into bears, but our God, he can turn your bear into a rabbit. Do you know what, listen, do you know what bears are scared of? They're scared of lions. They're scared of lions. And we have in our quarter the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He can make your bear run like a rabbit. So hear me, anxiety may not be a sin, but it is a signal. And if you let it, your anxiety can be the very thing that brings you closer to Jesus. And here's the shift you've got to make. Every anxious thought that you have is an invitation from our God. So don't run from it. Don't strive. Come to him. So what if this week, every time the alarm goes off in your head, you stop right there and you say, God, I feel anxious about my kids, my family, the news on TV, my job. The list of things that we can be anxious about is endless. But instead of carrying it, I'm going to bring it into his presence. Those are the two tools. You name it so that you can tame it. And if you do that, here's my promise. You're going to discover peace. But listen, it's not peace found in the absence of problems. It's a peace found in the presence of Jesus. And I know this because these tools, for me, they're not theoretical. This is not something I learned once back in counseling and I mastered. It is something that I'm living in right now. 7 days ago, 5 minutes before I walked onto this very stage to preach about mental health, I was hit with anxiety. Not the doctor's office, not a wilderness challenge, right here in this room. Do you know how ironic that is? To preach about anxiety while being frozen in anxiety. But in the moment, it didn't feel ironic. It felt silly, it felt humiliating. Like something was wrong with me. I'm standing here in this auditorium, worship is going on all around me, and my chest, it's tight, my stomach is in knots, and I couldn't shake what I had seen on the news just a few days earlier. Just a few days earlier, I had seen a man step onto a stage like this and be shot. I saw his widow on TV days later carrying the unthinkable. I watched his kids, 1 and 3 years old. It's the same age as my kids. I saw them now growing up without their dad. And I sat in this auditorium, I did everything I could to shake those images, but I couldn't. And my brain was spiraling, and here was the question I kept asking. If I step onto this stage, will my 3-year-old grow up without their dad? It's embarrassing to say. It's silly to speak out loud. And maybe it was a rabbit that my amygdala turned into a bear. But I'll be honest, I was more afraid in that moment than I ever was sleeping in a sleeping bag in the woods. I tried to ignore it, but it only got bigger. I tried to push through it and just jump on that stage, but it only got heavier because that's what anxiety does. So here's what I did. I slipped backstage, I sat in the green room, and I pulled out my phone. And I typed into my journal. And here's what I wrote. I said, I'm about to preach in 3 minutes. I feel anxious and I feel scared. The shooting of Charlie Kirk has me rattled and I feel silly even writing this, but I just can't shake it. I named it. And it stopped the spiral just long enough for me to breathe. I took in this deep breath. I planted my feet on the ground. I whispered a prayer to tame it. And I said, I'm safe, I'm loved, and I'm not alone. Those are the only words that I could come up with. Over and over again, I said them. I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm not alone. I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm not alone. I kept praying it, and I kept taking it to my God. I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm not alone. And right there, 3 minutes before walking on this stage, the people in the back were looking for me. Jesus met me. Jesus' peace filled me. Peace isn't the absence of problems, it's the presence of Jesus. And listen, I wish that I could tell you that was the very end of the story, that I was healed once and for all, and I never thought about it again. And our God does that. He can do that. I know some of your stories are that story. That wasn't my story this week, because the next morning on Monday, when I scrolled through social, the spiral came back. So do you know what I did? I picked up the phone. I called a pastor friend named Tame, and I told him I feel anxious about it, and we prayed together. And do you know what happened again? Jesus' peace came. Amen. Later in the week, while I was writing this message for this week, it hit again. So I called Casey, I named it, and then I prayed together to tame it. And to be honest, I'm kind of tired of it. To be more honest, the people around me, I think, are even more tired of it. Do you know who hasn't grown tired of it? The God who knit me together in my mother's womb. The God who thinks about me more time than there are grains of sand on the seashore. That God delights in it. He delights in me coming to him and saying, search me, oh God, know my anxious thoughts. He never gets tired of hearing it, because he made me and he knows me. He was the very one that placed the signal inside of me. A signal that says that perfect peace isn't the absence of problem, it's the presence of Jesus. Listen, anxiety's real. If you ignore it, it's going to crush you. If you fight it on your own, it will exhaust you. But you don't have to do it, because our God made you. He knows you. He already knows your anxious thoughts, and he wants to use them as an opportunity to meet you right here, right now, in this moment. And so in this room, at all of our campuses, if you'll let me, I want to lead you through practicing these tools together right here, right now. Are you up for that? Let's bow our heads together. Will you pray with me? First, before we get started, just let's take a deep breath in. You feel that? Do you feel the air filling your lungs? That's God's gift of life in you right now. That means he loves you. Right here, just plant your feet firmly on the ground, 2 feet on the ground. You feel the ground beneath you. That's God telling you you are safe in this place. You are surrounded by him, and you're surrounded by his people. You are not alone. And as you sit right here, here's what I want you to do. I want you to open your hands right in front of you. In that posture, it just says, I don't have to carry this on myself. I can release it. And now I just want you to whisper these words under your breath. I'm anxious about. I feel anxious about. And then I want you to fill in the blank. Say it to your Father. Put words to it. Name it. What are the anxious thoughts in your life? Let's stop the spiral. Jesus, I'm anxious about. Let's name it. And now as you hold it there in your hands, I want you to picture just placing it into his hands. Just pray these words. God, I give this to you. God, I give this to you. God, I give this to you. This is how we tame it, not by controlling it, but by transferring it, by releasing it into his care. Let it go. Open those hands. Let it go. Tame it. And let's declare this together. Say it with me. I'm safe. I'm loved. I'm not alone. Whisper it out loud. I'm safe. I'm loved. I'm not alone. I'm loved, I'm not alone. I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm not alone. I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm not alone. Just remind yourself of what our God promises you. You are in his presence right now, and he is giving you his peace. I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm not alone, because I sit in the presence of Jesus. Jesus, thanks for meeting us in this moment. Thank you for conquering the bears in our life. You are the Lion of the tribe of Judah. You make bears run like rabbits, and we transfer these things to you because we know that you can tame it. We set them in your hands. We are loved, we are known, and we are seen by you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. And all